All right, this video is going to definitely result in a lot of hate coming my way, but I've been having many conversations with many beekeepers, and someone's got to say it. So every single year, United States beekeepers lose somewhere between 40 to 60% of their colonies. Yes, you heard that statistic right. They are definitely losing 40 to 60% every year. And to be quite frank with you, that is not sustainable whatsoever. And yet, instead of fighting the causes behind all of these losses, beekeepers are instead fighting each other over a program called ELAP, or the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program. So the big question is ELAP saving beekeepers, or is it just rewarding bad beekeeping? All right, so here's the deal with ELAP. A lot of people think that it's just some kind of handout, but to be honest, that is not what it actually is. ELAP was designed to help livestock producers, so beekeepers included, to recover after those curveballs that you simply just cannot plan for. And it's not like you're cashing in and walking away with a profit. It's actually far from it, because it doesn't even cover your full loss. What it does give you is just enough money to be able to piece things back together when something totally out of your control wipes out your hives. The best way to think of it is it's kind of like a safety net. It's not a golden parachute. It's not glamorous. And it's just one way that keeps you moving forward instead of hitting the ground and not being able to get back up. And for an industry where we are losing 40 to 60% of our colonies annually, having something like this to help you rebuild isn't just nice, it is actually necessary. So let's break this down a little bit further, because I think people don't quite realize what ELAP actually covers versus how much it really costs you to rebuild when you do have a loss. So right now, the USDA says that the average value of a hive is about $230, and the average value of a colony, so the bees inside the hive, not just the frames in the box, the bees themselves, is about $129. ELAP covers only 75% of that value. So that means that if you do end up losing a colony, ELAP is only going to pay you out about $96.75 per unit. Now, these are stats based off of what they did last year for 2024. Now, it's also worth mentioning that ELAP doesn't just kick in for every single dead hive that you have. For honeybee colony losses, ELAP only covers losses in excess of the normal mortality rate, which the USDA defines as anything over 22% of your starting colonies for the year. So an example of that would be if you were to start the season with, say, 1,000 hives, the USDA assumes that you're just going to automatically lose 220 hives. That is just pretty much normal. ELAP only pays on the colonies after that number, only the colonies that you lose beyond those 220 hives. Now, here's the reality check, and this is why beekeeping has gotten so hard today. So to actually rebuild one hive, first, you're looking at about $100 to $150 for that hive equipment. That is, if you even need to replace it. Say it was sprayed and the box is no longer to be usable, because when you do get sprayed and your equipment gets sprayed, a lot of times you can't put bees back into that equipment. So that's around $100 to $150. So to replace the actual bees, a package of bees is about $150 to like $180. Just depends on where you're getting it. And then after that, you still have your feeds, your treatments, your labor, and the time that it takes your colony to actually build up. And on top of that, the income that was lost because that colony wasn't to the size that it would have been had it not have collapsed. So by the time you add it all up, you're easily looking at anywhere between $300 to $400 per hive just to get back on your feet. So no, this program isn't making anybody rich. It doesn't even make you whole to begin with. It honestly just keeps you from being completely wiped out. That is why I call this a safety net. It's just enough to kind of like soften the blow so that you can rebuild and keep going, but it's not like some jackpot. But here's the real fight that is happening in our industry currently. It's a little sad to see. A lot of the beekeepers feel like ELAP is broken. They'll say, this program just rewards bad beekeeping and bad management. If you can't keep your bees alive, why should taxpayers and other beekeepers bail you out? That's fair. The argument goes that without ELAP, people would be forced to stop and take better care of their hives, and we'd be all stronger because of it. Others go even further, saying that the program doesn't build resilience, it actually creates dependency. And that tension, it is tearing at the beekeeping community. Instead of locking arms against the real challenges like pesticides, forage loss, climate change, and now new invasive mites, we're actually turning on each other. We're pointing fingers and blaming fellow beekeepers as if someone else in the industry is the reason for why our bees keep dying. But the truth is that no matter how good you are at managing bees, there are forces way, way bigger than us at play. I hate to say it, but beekeepers are not losing 40 to 60% of their hives every single year just because somebody isn't doing their job right. That is actually way, way, way too simple. I wish it was that simple. Every year, there are new sprays, new chemical concoctions, and sometimes even brand new crop treatments hitting the market. Some of the crops that we already know are brutal on the bees, crops that will leave your colonies looking beat up, weak, and barely even hanging on, and still somebody has to pollinate them. Who's going to take that risk if there's no safety net, no program like ELAP to give you a chance to rebuild? And then you have an even bigger problem, the food for our bees. Forage is shrinking everywhere. Our landscapes are less diverse, less nutritious, and sometimes almost completely unrecognizable from what they used to be. There just simply is not enough natural food to support healthy colonies in many places. So this isn't about good or bad beekeeping. Even the best, most careful beekeepers are facing challenges that they simply cannot control. This is about a system that is stacked against bees and anyone that is trying to keep them alive. And just when you think the challenges can't get any bigger, you also have a new threat on the horizon, the Tropilaelaps mite. This mite has already been confirmed in Europe after spreading from Asia. And if you look at the history of Varroa, it's following the exact same path. The way that it moves is a serious warning sign for North American beekeepers. There is a group that is pushing to completely close the borders in North America to any sort of bee movement, so no imports, no exports, trying to help keep this mite out. On the other side, though, there's pushback, especially from our neighbors up north, but that is an entirely political discussion that we probably shouldn't get into right now. But it's important to know what's happening so that you can do your own research and form your own opinion on this and figure out where you stand. So here is the bottom line. If Tropilaelaps shows up in North America, it could completely devastate hives across the entire continent. And without a program like ELAP, how are we supposed to rebuild after something like that? Or is that actually what some people want? To wipe out the small and mid-sized beekeepers so that the only operations left are the big ones, so that only the big operations can survive. This isn't just about speculation. This is a real scenario that we need to actually be prepared for. And it's another reason why having some kind of safety net in place isn't just optional, it's essential for the survival of our industry. Now, let's go even deeper into this because you know me, that's what I like to do. And let's look at the bigger picture because it's not very pretty. Beekeeping is actually one of the last parts of agriculture that hasn't been completely monopolized. Think about the corn and the soy farmers. Most of them can't even replant their own seeds. Otherwise, they will have tons and tons of lawsuits coming after them because those seeds are patented and controlled by just a few huge companies. Now, imagine What would happen if ELAP disappeared? Small and mid-sized beekeepers, the ones who are actually keeping the industry diverse and resilient, would be in serious trouble. They wouldn't be able to survive a major loss, and that opens the door for big operations to just swoop in and take over. And before you know it, the entire industry would start to look like the rest of agriculture, just a handful of corporations controlling everything and independent beekeepers squeezed out. We'd lose diversity, the competition, the independence that makes this industry unique and why a lot of us have actually gotten into it in the first place. This isn't about politics or policy. This is about the future of the beekeeping world and who gets to be a part of it. Now, some people also argue that if we don't have ELAP or rainfall insurance, that maybe we'd finally be able to stop foreign honey from flooding the US market. But here's the reality. How are we supposed to take on global trade issues when we can't even keep our own hives alive? When a big loss hits, small and mid-sized beekeepers don't have the cash to weather that storm. Without programs like ELAP, many wouldn't even be able to make it to the next season, let alone have the resources to fight foreign competition. I'm sorry, but it just simply does not add up to me. You can't protect your market if your own business is constantly at risk of collapse. That is why these programs aren't just about surviving, they're about keeping the industry strong enough to actually have a voice in the bigger economic picture. And we can't forget about the environment. The world that our bees are living in today is changing really, really fast. It's actually kind of scary and not in a good way. Take something like cloud seeding, for example. Companies like Rainmaker are planning to dump 10 times more water over certain parts of the United States in the next decade. That might sound like a good idea on the surface, but water doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's got to come from somewhere else. That means that some regions are going to get drier while other regions are going to face flooding. So, what does that mean for bees? Unpredictable weather, messed up forage patterns, and really tough seasons where it's harder to keep colonies healthy. One year, you might have plenty of nectar and pollen, and the next year, your hives could be starving and stressed out from floods and drought. And here's the thing, without programs like ELAP, how are beekeepers going to survive through these swings? How are you going to rebuild after a season that is completely out of your control? These programs are not luxuries, they're survival tools for an industry that's facing some of the toughest environmental challenges that we have ever seen. Now, I want to show you a couple charts that could actually help put things into perspective for you. First, let's take a look at the United States specifically. The number of managed honeybee colonies has actually dropped from 6 million back in 1940 to just 2 million today. This completely blew my mind when I saw this because it seems to be the normal just conversation is that we have too many bees than how much forage we have in the area. So this truly shows just how much our forage has decreased over the last 80 years. And that drop in all of our managed honeybee colonies, that's a 2/3 reduction over 80 years. That is staggering when you see it laid out visually like that. It really drives home how much we've lost. Then if you zoom out and look at a global picture, this other chart shows that the colony numbers across different countries are actually changing. And the striking part is that America's line is headed downward. But in places like Europe and Asia, managed colonies are actually increasing. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, why are we declining while other regions are actually growing? What are we doing differently, and what challenges are unique to the United States that are putting our honeybee colonies and our beekeepers in such a disadvantage? These charts aren't just numbers, they're a wake-up call for why programs like ELAP matter and why we need to pay attention to the bigger picture. All right. Do I really want to say this? This one is going to really ruffle some feathers, but like I said, somebody's got to say it because I can see the writing on the wall. And that is that a lot of large-scale beekeepers are actually getting ready to retire. Many of them are counting on selling their operations when they step away, and that is a really big reason why some are pushing to get rid of ELAP. They don't want startups or younger beekeepers coming in and competing with them. But let's be honest, there are already huge barriers. I can tell you firsthand, there are huge barriers for anyone trying to break into this industry. Margins are razor thin. If someone buys a big operation, goes into debt, and tries to figure it out on the fly, I'm telling you right now, the odds are stacked against them, and most people end up losing everything in the first couple of years. But they're still left holding that debt. And that's exactly why it's a normal saying in the industry, do not ever go in debt buying bees. And see, now that doesn't set the next generation of beekeepers up for success. It actually sets them up to fail. And I mean, I get it though. I truly do get it. I understand why retiring beekeepers want to protect their investment, but eliminating programs that actually give us a fighting chance against new mites, new chemical threats, or a biotech surprise, that's not protecting the industry. It's burning a bridge behind you and leaving the next generation to clean up the mess. So at the end of the day, the bottom line is that we need a strong, healthy beekeeping industry that is still standing 50 or even 60 years from now. We need it to be something that younger beekeepers can step into and build on, not something that they inherit in pieces just as it's been torn apart. If we destroy programs like ELAP just so a few people can make their retirement a little bit easier, yep, go ahead and hate me. We're not just hurting a few operations, we're actually putting the entire future of beekeeping at risk. There won't be anything left for the next generation really to work with at that point. So we truly need to think about long term. It's not about who's in charge right now or who's retiring. It's about making sure that this industry survives and thrives for decades to come. Now, there's also been talk about a new program, and it is called UPLIFT. The idea behind it sounds good at first glance. Instead of only stepping up in a disaster, UPLIFT would give subsidies to beekeepers who could actually keep their colonies alive. On paper, it's a reward for doing things right. But here's where things get a little bit tricky. Some of the details actually reveal some pretty strong limitations. First and foremost, payments are going to be $75 per hive and only until the funds run out, so it's not guaranteed. To qualify, you need to show $135 in bee-related sales per hive, which automatically cuts out smaller and part-time beekeepers. You also can't grow more than 5% a year, which basically excludes anyone who's expanding their operation. And any claims made over $200,000 require a yard inspection, adding just more hoops for large-scale operators. And if you're receiving UPLIFT, you cannot take ELAP in the same year. I understand that one. When you look at it this way, it's pretty clear who actually benefits. That would be your established and large-scale operations, but small or growing beekeepers are completely cut out. So while this idea does sound nice, in reality, it could end up doing the opposite of what we actually need. Instead of protecting the industry and keeping it diverse, it might actually accelerate monopolization, concentrating resources and support in the hands of a few big players. So at this point, we've really got to stop and ask ourselves some really tough questions. Do we really want to tear out the one and only safety net that keeps the small and mid-sized beekeepers in business? Who actually benefits if those smaller operations collapse? Because it sure isn't going to be the bees or the future of this industry. And what happens when the next crisis, Whether it's the new invasive mite Tropilaelaps, extreme weather, or an unexpected chemical threat, are we going to be ready, or will we be starting from scratch with nothing to fall back on? And finally, are we really okay with leaving the next generation of beekeepers pretty much nothing but debt, razor-thin margins, in an industry that has been completely hollowed out? These aren't just theoretical questions. This is the true reality that we are facing if we make decisions based on short-term thinking or ego, instead of the long-term survival of what is best for our industry. The choices that we make today will shape the future of the beekeeping industry for decades to come. So, at the end of the day, beekeepers don't need to be tearing at each other and tearing each other apart. We actually need to be standing together, because the challenges that we're facing aren't coming from each other. They're coming from pests, chemicals, climate change, and a system that is not always set up in our favor. Yes, I will agree that ELAP is not perfect. UPLIFT is not perfect either, but the reality is that without these programs, the future of beekeeping won't belong to independent, passionate beekeepers. It'll belong to big corporations that see bees only as tools that can make them a profit. So maybe the question isn't whether ELAP should exist at all. Maybe the real question is, how do we make sure that these programs actually do what they're supposed to do? Protect both the people who care for the bees and the pollinators that we all depend on. We need solutions that keep the industry strong, sustainable, and diverse, not just for us today, but for the next generation of beekeepers and the future of our food system. So go ahead, hate me if you must. But like I said, somebody had to say it, because that is what a lot of us younger beekeepers are thinking. So I can't wait to hear what you guys have to think. Definitely throw your thoughts in the comments below. And I guess we will chat there. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't quit, be fit.